grab a cup, and start your engines. You're listening to Cars and Coffee on 91.3 WHJE. Good afternoon. You're listening to Cars and Coffee on 91.3 WHJE. My name is Nathan Ward, and for this first segment of the show, I have a special guest in here. Noah Moore, say hi to everybody.
Hello, everybody. I'm Noah Moore, student at Carmel High School.
We were in here DJing the other day, and Noah, you're a big NASCAR guy,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Huge NASCAR guy.
We're looking at the song list in here, and we see a song that is the artist is labeled as Dale Earnhardt Jr. Jr.
Yeah. So, Dale Earnhardt Jr. is the son of the almighty famous Dale Earnhardt Sr., the best NASCAR driver to ever live. In my opinion, that is.
In his humble opinion.
Yeah. And we were DJing, and I saw this, so I was like, since when did Dale Earnhardt Jr. start singing?
Yeah,
I was so confused.
I could have sworn he did some special thing for charity years ago, but this is not it.
It was
so we played it. We played the song. It's not
nothing,
Dale.
nothing like that.
So before we get the show truly started, we are going to play a very deceiving song called "You Didn't See Me" by Dale Earnhardt Jr. And apparently it's listed as Dale Earnhardt Jr. Jr. in the in the song list.
Yeah.
So this is "You Didn't See Me" by not the famous Dale Earnhardt Jr. You're listening to Cars and Coffee. Don't go anywhere. Cars and Coffee will be right back on 91.3 WHJE. Hi, if you're listening to this right now, that means you're listening to the YouTube version of the show. I just want to say thank you for listening, and make sure to subscribe so you never miss another show and more highlights from the TWYR channel. Now, let's get back to the show. Welcome back to Cars and Coffee. That was "You Didn't See Me" by the incorrect Dale Earnhardt Jr. That is not the Dale Earnhardt Jr. that most racing fans know of. I actually don't know who this guy is at all, but I thought it was funny, so I thought I would share it and have a chance to get Noah in here in the booth with me because I need guests. But I'm doing the rest of the show solo today. We have a lot of IndyCar news to talk about. There's talk of races happening in the next couple years. There's some really bad driver moves, honestly, that have been made, and we have some upcoming races this week, ending some seasons and getting towards the epic finale of the F1 season. It's gonna be close, but we're gonna start over here on this side of the Atlantic with IndyCar news. We have with the recent weekend in Mexico City for Formula One, IndyCar and the promoters for the Mexico City Grand Prix are going to have more rounds of talks to work on a potential race in 2026, which is great because when Pato O'Ward went down there to do a free practice for McLaren, he was swarmed in a shopping mall by thousands and thousands and thousands of fans. And for people who don't see that marketing opportunity, I don't know what else to say other than you're blind. The thing with, even with Sergio Perez, who is not that good of a driver, they have had incredible ticket sales for the Mexico City Grand Prix for years and years and years because of Checo. Everyone in Mexico wants to go out there and rep their hometown driver or their home driver from their home country, which is awesome. And I think IndyCar, a series that is as cash-strapped as it is, needs to capitalize on the popularity of an international driver. It's almost a no-brainer, but with Mark Miles being an idiot, with Mark Miles being kind of an idiot, he's kind of shut down the whole Mexico City thing, and they also didn't really try when they were doing the Mexico City negotiations because they sent a guy named they sent Ricardo Escoto's dad. Ricardo Escoto is an Indy Next driver that really doesn't have, honestly, sorry, he doesn't have that much potential. I don't know why he's in an Andretti Cape car. They sent him to Mexico City to negotiate with these promoters, and they he told them he was the exclusive representative of IndyCar in Latin America, and the talks went nowhere. So it's been frozen for a while. Now, actual representatives from Penske are going to come down there and hold talks with the Mexico City promoters and hopefully get something done, because that's going to be a sold-out event. I guarantee you, NASCAR's going down there. You have Daniel Suarez. That race is going to be huge. I really don't care if IndyCar's playing third fiddle to F1 in Mexico City. If you can get a 200,000 strong crowd there because you have a home driver, absolutely do it. Speaking of Pato O'Ward, he's going to go to Mexico City on the Formula E weekend. He's going to go on the Formula E weekend, and he's going to demo a Formula E car, but he's also going to demo an Indy car. He's going to demo the Indy car on the Formula E track, which is probably not going to go well because that track is tiny. But it's publicity, it's more exposure for Pato, and it's going to be great all around for Formula E and for IndyCar. On the other side of Latin America, on the southern side of Latin America, we have Brazilian officials are more interested now in a race in Sao Paulo at the Sao Paulo F1 track for 2026, which is also great. The 2026 schedule is looking really good so far, other than the fact that Indianapolis Motor Speedway still looks like it's going to be the only big oval on the schedule. But having more of these international races where you can sell crowds, where you can sell out crowds in places that don't really necessarily know a lot about IndyCar, get a lot more exposure, that's a great thing for the sport. There's something else that I have a little more comment on. The Chip Ganassi finalized their IndyCar driver lineup and their Indy Next driver lineup. But there are a couple caveats in the form of three pay drivers that I really don't like. Kiffin Simpson has now taken control of the number 8 American Legion Honda. And honestly, yeah, he's got money. I don't know. Kiffin definitely doesn't have as much potential that a guy like, say, Linus Lundqvist, the 2024 Rookie of the Year, who's out of a job. I don't know. I hate that the Rookie of the Year still doesn't have a job. That's disappointing. I think I really don't like that money is the love of money is the root of all evil. And you can see it in IndyCar now, because the Rookie of the Year, who's a darn good driver, doesn't have a job. Kiffin Simpson, whose dad owns like a ton of stuff, including Ridgeline Oil, and he's got Journey Rewards sponsoring him. So that car has no sponsorship issues whatsoever. But their Indy Next lineup is what really gets me. Their lineup is going to be Jonathan Brown, who did nothing of note last year driving for HMD, and Niels Colin. Niels Colin, who did 10 races in Indy Next. He then moves over to Europe, finishes last in every single F2 race that he does, and then he comes back over here. I can't believe... My theory on this is that Alex Palou's contract is getting so expensive that Chip Ganassi has to hire 3 pay drivers to pay Alex Palou's contract, which is insane. But we've got really bad driver choices in general so far. But we still have Rinus VeeKay and Linus Lundqvist on the market, which I don't know. I don't know if they're going to get jobs, man. I really hope they do. I don't know if they will. But Junko still has 2 cars open that we know of. Prema has 1 car open, but I think that car is going to go to Robert Schwartzman. And then the coin cars, for an absolute last resort for a guy like Linus Lundqvist or Rinus VeeKay, you have Dale Coyne to go to. But that does it pretty much for the IndyCar news. We are going to kick it to a song break before we come back to some of the other stuff This is Down in a Hole by Alice in Chains. You are listening to Cars and Coffee on 91.3 WHJE. Don't go anywhere. Cars and Coffee will be right back on 91.3 WHJE. Hi, if you're listening to this right now, that means you're listening to the YouTube version of the show. I just want to say thank you for listening, and make sure to subscribe so you never miss another show and more highlights from the TWYR channel. Now, let's get back to the show. Welcome back to Cars and Coffee here on 91.3 WHJE. My name is Nathan Ward. That was Down in a Hole by Alice in Chains, one of my favorite Alice in Chains songs. Shout out to Ryan Powell, huge Alice in Chains fan, CHTV graduate. We usually hate the TV kids in here, but Ryan Powell, he's pretty cool. He's been on the show before with Oliver and Kyle. Shout out to him. Back to the Indy Next thing. I didn't get a chance to finish my thought because I was being harassed through the window by my friends. So, back to the Indy Next news. Jonathan Brown and Niels Colin for Chip Ganassi Racing is a mid at best lineup. Niels Colin has done basically nothing of note in his entire career. Except for crash, and get confused with Louis Foster's car last year. Jonathan Brown is probably the most forgettable HMD driver from last year, but I think he has some potential. The fact that he was in like the 9th HMD car, maybe not. Maybe that potential couldn't be realized, but I think Brown having a strong team like Ganassi behind him. I know it's basically just their IMSA team that's coming over for a year before they do the Genesis Hypercar program. That I think Jonathan Brown could actually improve a little bit. For Niels Colin, in my opinion, this is going to sound harsh, but Niels Colin is basically a walking stack of cash for whoever signs him in any racing series. He joined AIX for Formula 2 for actually a couple races about a month or so ago, and he didn't do well at all. The fact that he was 6 seconds behind the guy in front of him after like one lap, which I don't know how you can be so off. Like even on like high difficulty in an F1 simulator, I can be faster than Niels Colin. That's an issue. I think that car is going to be 21st or whatever, however, he's going to be like anywhere in the bottom 5 pretty much the entire year, unless like you go to Iowa and you have a ton of people crash out. You you can't. Niels Colin he doesn't have potential, but. Moving on to some greener pastures, you may say. Haas Formula One team has entered a technical partnership with Toyota Gazoo Racing. This is going to be great for the only American F1 team on the grid, as they will gain access to the first simulator they have ever had. Haas F1 team, I did not know this. They don't have a simulator. So if you've ever played a game like F1 23 and you've played My Team, you get to upgrade your simulator. Haas doesn't have a simulator. They never had one until they inked this partnership with Toyota. They get to use their aero facility in Cologne, Germany. They get to use Toyota's wind tunnels. They have technical know-how. They have the simulator. But this does not mean Toyota is coming back to Formula One as an engine manufacturer. Which is unfortunate because we just had Renault bow out, or they're going to bow out at the end of the 2025 season when the original turbo hybrid regulations end, which that kind of sucks because Renault's kind of a cool manufacturer. They've been here forever. They ushered in the turbo era of Formula One, where everyone started using insane like 1,000 horsepower qualifying engines just to bin it after one run and put a new engine in for the race. That era of Formula One is insane. moving on, but before we move on to the next bit of F1 news, I would like to remind everyone listening that Cars and Coffee has an Instagram account. Go follow Cars and Coffee _WHJE. You can DM us there if you want to get on the show sometime. Go follow Instagram.com/Cars and Coffee _WHJE. Our next bit of F1 news involves the World Championship leader himself. Max Verstappen is going to need to take an engine penalty at some point before the end of the season. If you change an engine, or if you don't mileage out an engine, you have to take a penalty. So Red Bull has basically worn down all of their allocated engines for the year. You're only allowed a certain amount of engines as a cost-saving measure. You can only have, I think, maybe 5 power units the entire year. Red Bull has used all those up, and Verstappen's going to have to take an engine penalty, which will drop him out of a top 10 start because it's a 10-place grid penalty. So if he gets pole, he starts 11th. That's huge, especially in the championship with Lando Norris taking bite after bite after bite after bite out of his championship lead in the points every single race. That's going to be huge. So if he takes it at Brazil and Norris takes pole, or if he takes pole at Brazil, Norris starts second, or Norris qualifies second, Norris moves up to first, Verstappen will end up starting 11th out of the points. Now, if he has a new engine, he'll definitely be able to climb into the points. The question is how far. We don't really know. So, that's a huge what if when Red Bull is trying to salvage this Drivers' Championship. They've basically already lost the Constructors' Championship because their second driver isn't reliable. Sergio Perez has not been a reliable point scorer since the opening 3 races of the year. That's a huge problem for Red Bull because not only are you losing your prestige by not winning the Constructors' Championship, you're losing a significant chunk of prize money to develop your future engine program that you have with Ford. That's going to be big for Red Bull on the development scale because they're falling back already because Adrian Newey is leaving. Red Bull is not going to be in a good spot when next year. They're probably going to have to replace a driver. They may still eke out a Drivers' Championship with Verstappen. I doubt they're going to make up their ground in the Constructors. That's going to be a real issue for Oracle Red Bull Racing coming into the end of this year and the beginning of next year when the whole circus rolls up to Melbourne to start 2025. Now, some good news involving Red Bull is that they may get a very nice young Argentinian driver that's actually showing quite a bit of potential in a Williams. Franco Colapinto, according to motorsport.com, has been tabbed to join the Red Bull Driver Academy in 2025. Because of the issues that Red Bull has surrounding Sergio Perez, they're probably going to fire him at the end of the year. Do not be surprised if Perez doesn't have a job next year, or if he's in that second Sauber. But the Franco Colapinto could replace Liam Lawson at RB, which is their basically junior F1 team, because Red Bull owns 2 F1 teams. It's dumb, but that's how it is. But Colapinto replacing Lawson would mean that Lawson goes up to the Red Bull main team. And you might be asking, well, why will Red Bull not hire anyone from within their own academy? Their top contender right now is fighting for the F2 championship. He's Isaac Hadjar. He's not quite ready. Even though he's doing really well in F2, I don't think he's ready for an F1 drive. What Red Bull is probably going to do is throw him in a test and development program with their old F1 cars before they even consider putting him in a race seat. And that's where I think Colapinto comes in, because Colapinto has race experience. He's scored points in a Williams, which is great. That's what he came in to do after Logan Sargent was unceremoniously fired after the Dutch Grand Prix. Colapinto has done his job at Williams. I think he'd be a great fit at RB, but the question is, do they want to put someone who's unproven like Colapinto in at RB, or do they want to keep Lawson where he is and shop around for somebody else like Valtteri Bottas, who could be a free agent? Red Bull has a lot on their plate right now. And it's clearly obvious. They are struggling a little bit, but we really won't know what their situation is going to be until they roll up to Melbourne next year. We have 2 more segments left in the show. One of them is a very, very, very great piece of news, and the other is just our schedule for the weekend. But before we get there, I want to play one of my favorite songs ever. Shout out to Kyle Conley, massive Tom Petty fan. Thank you to him for coming back to the show a couple weeks ago for Radiothon. Thank you to him and Oliver Mason for coming back. This is Stop Dragging My Heart Around from Stevie Nicks and Tom Petty. You're listening to Cars and Coffee on 91.3. Don't go anywhere. Cars and Coffee will be right back on 91.3 WHJE. Hi, if you're listening to this right now, that means you're listening to the YouTube version of the show. I just want to say thank you for listening, and make sure to subscribe so you never miss another show and more highlights from the TWYR channel. Now, let's get back to the show. That was Stop Dragging My Heart Around by Stevie Nicks and Tom Petty, one of my favorite, maybe my all-time favorite duet. That might be a little bit of a stretch, but I don't know. You're listening to Cars and Coffee on 91.3 WHJ. My name is Nathan Ward. Our last segment of the day is... I don't really talk about very many lower tier feeder series when it comes to IndyCar, but this stuck out to me as an incredibly good decision made by the management of Anderson Promotions, which runs the bottom 3 rungs of the IndyCar ladder: USF Juniors, USF 2000, and then you have USF Pro 2000. They did something that I really like. They increased horsepower for the USF Pro 2000 and the USF 2000 cars. And Dan Anderson, the guy that runs the whole show, says it's for entertainment purposes. Like, this gives, I think, jumping from, say, a USF Pro car into an Indy Next car, that's a big jump. Even with the horsepower increase, that's still a big jump. But even Anderson realizes that that's a big jump, and he's actually fixing the car to tailor more to what the drivers want, which is something that Penske Entertainment should really take notes on. Cough, cough, Mark Miles. But Dan Anderson said, quote, "Our goal is to constantly provide the best platform to prepare our drivers to progress up the ladder." That's perfect. That's exactly what you need to do to, 1, make sure your drivers are prepared for the big time, and 2, make sure you have an entertaining junior series for people to watch. They stream all their races on YouTube. They're free to watch. You should watch USF Pro 2000. Maybe pick a driver, so if they get to IndyCar, you could say, hey, I rooted for that kid when they were a kid. But that's a great... it's great news from the bottom of the ladder to see that people like Dan Anderson and the crew that runs the USF Pro Championships, that they actually want to change the cars, that they want to make the cars better and better suiting to the drivers. So it says here, according to Racer.com, that Elite Engines, the official engine supplier for the USF Pro Championships, will reset the USF Pro 2000 rev limiter from 500 RPM to 8,350 RPM, affecting the engine's power output and drivability. Peak horsepower output will be boosted as much as 10 horsepower at the top end, while the bottom end will gain as much as 40 horsepower, culminating in lower lap times, a substantial improvement in acceleration out of slower corners, along with an increase in top speeds. We love that they're increasing the speed. USF 2000, the step below, will continue with its current rev limiter, but they will remove the engine restrictor, which will result in a 20 horsepower increase at the top end, an increase in acceleration, and a small gain in lap time. But all round of applause to Dan Anderson and the USF Pro team to figure out that this was needed and actually make changes to the car, something that Penske Entertainment has actively kind of refused to do. But that's not their fault, because IndyCar's been cash-strapped since Tony George almost bankrupted himself trying to keep the IRL alive. But even if he didn't, CART was already dead, so I don't say this a lot, but maybe we should thank Tony George for pumping his family savings into the IRL so we'd at least have one IndyCar series alive for the eventual reunification before, because that was after CART had already died off. But overall, wanted to end on a positive with a huge round of applause to the USF Pro team for increasing horsepower and making the cars faster, because who doesn't love faster cars? And maybe closing that gap a little bit between the bottom two rungs of the ladder and the top two rungs of the ladder. We are going to finish off the show with two races that are happening this week. Formula One is going to be at Interlagos, a track that IndyCar is looking at going to, and a track that Brazilian officials might want IndyCar to go to. They're going to be at the Autodromo José Carlos Pache in Sao Paulo, Brazil, for the Brazilian Grand Prix on Sunday, the 3rd of November. The race will be at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's when the coverage will begin on ESPN. The FIA World Endurance Championship will wrap up its season at the Babco Energy's 8 Hours of Bahrain on Saturday, November 2nd. It will be 7 a.m. Eastern Time because they're in the Middle East. That race will be streamed fully on HBO Max, or I think it's just called Max now. But that's all we have for this episode of Cars and Coffee. Make sure to follow our Instagram and get in touch with the show to see if you like cars. There's a good chance we'll talk about having you on the show. So DM the show, Cars and Coffee _WHJ. You go follow us on Instagram. Thank you for listening to Cars and Coffee on 91.3 WHJ. My name is Nathan Ward.
More soul free. Wash